Hello, how are you? Today I wanted to share something of interest as I just received my first down payment as one of YouTube's most innovative and groundbreaking, if not downright popular channels. I have indeed received my first payment of silver coinage, $2 from the US of A. Hopefully, in the coming months, as I become ever more popular, I am due to receive another 28 coins as I continue to share my thoughts on how wonderful the EU, NATO, the USA, and Israel is. But I'm quite interested in the history, significance, and symbolism of these coins themselves. Well, I was chatting to this guy who was selling collectibles because there is something in human nature, if not the male instinct to collect things. And people collect all kinds of things these days, or any days, from matchboxes to baseball cards to records to coins. And of course, coins are something that hold significant historical meaning, the time they were made, why they were made, and the empires and nations that made them that have faded into history. Well, we're only talking about relatively recent history, which I suppose seems like ancient history to younger viewers. Well, no, it's just interesting. He was telling me that he had lots of Ukrainians and Russians coming into him recently and buying up anything that had silver in them. And he was quite annoyed because they would melt the coins down just for the silver value and send it back to the motherland. And of course, that history is then gone forever. But he had these two $half, and they used to put real silver in the American $half. These two coins contain about 90% uh, silver and I think about 10% copper. And I was always interested reading how Americans would sometimes mention in the online world how they would still occasionally find these silver $half in their change or in a vending machine, as of course, in our current idiocracy, people have no idea of their intrinsic value. So, this coin, this $half with the cracked Liberty Bell on the front, and then Benjamin Franklin on the back, 1963, In God We Trust, which was then replaced with the rather imperial eagle with JFK on the back in 1964. And the symbolism is most striking. So apparently, the story goes that when JFK was blown away, they wanted to remember him with a coin. Now, the other coins have US presidents, and apparently, Jackie Onassis didn't want JFK to replace one of the previous presidents. So what they suggested was they could replace the $half because Benjamin Franklin, most famous for inventing both kites and lightning, wasn't a president. So she said, okay, yeah, we'll go along with that. Um, so it's just interesting. Here we have America before and after. So up until 1963, I mean, there's older versions of this coin, of course. And here we have the world that existed from post World War II to 1963. The U.S. $half with the Liberty Bell. In God we trust. And then here is the world that came into existence in 1964. A very imperial Roman looking eagle. Peace and war, one might say. Liberty. In God we trust, 1964. Some things are so obvious and immediate, you can look right past them. Both proclaiming liberty, looking in opposite directions. But what struck me so much is on the Benjamin Franklin picture or bust, it's like those 19th century busts that people would make someone's likeness to immortalize them. While JFK is just the head, rather chopped off, almost like he was decapitated. And the decapitation directly in between the words, in God and we trust. Rather striking, isn't it? And because when you think of decapitations, we tend to think of Marie Antoinette and the French Revolution, something you'd see on TV or in a movie, something you would never see in real life, obviously. I mean, it's really amazing. I find that, almost as if there had been a coup. It's interesting how people often talk about how Oliver Stone's movie, JFK, sort of threw everything against a wall to see what stuck. Every possible conceivable theory from the Soviet Union to Cuba to the mafia to trade unions, which all seems like another sleight of hand magic trick or misdirection because the one person or interest group or nation that Oliver Stone didn't point his finger at was that little country in the eastern Mediterranean. Because Oliver Stone has sort of made a career out of criticizing the American military industrial complex and making kind of super real fantasies about America's mythology. But he never pointed the finger at that other country that seems to benefit from the gigantic mass of America's military industrial complex. I mean, I mean, just look with your own eyes, and you get it. 2 coins is nice because you get that silver feeling. A whole dollar. What could you buy with a dollar? Or about, I think it's about 10, 12 grams of silver in the $half. Um, and a 1 ounce silver coin would be, I think, 28 grams. And on the current market, according to the stock market price, I think is around $60, euros, punts. Depending where you live, I suppose it'd be about 10,000 pesetas, 100,000 drachma, 10 Deutschmarks, 40 pounds sterling, etc. So we're talking big money, obviously. Um, so some people get into silver as investments, and some people get very frustrated as it's taken a long time for silver to break out. Um, some people think you should put all your money in food and water, clean water. Some people think put all your money in Bitcoin. Of course, I can't possibly offer any economic advice to you. You would know best. It just seemed to me around 2016, the world was obviously going through a process of change, and we're now kind of living through a kind of controlled demolition. So going back about 2016, what I did personally, I put all my money into sardine coin, uh, source of omega-3, very small fish, so they don't live as long, thus they don't contain as many heavy metals or mercury. Uh, Good source of protein. Um, and they do say the longer you hold on to these, the more the taste improves, the more sardini they get, because this is practically an antique. 2022, as the world didn't actually end in 2021. So, I have to do some research on that if these have gone up in value. And vintage sardines. Um, One does wonder about what may be contained within uh, these tins and what you're consuming. They like to tell you things are BPA free, but of course, what corporations do is they just change one molecule and make something very similar. And then, in 20, 30 years, they say, oh, by the way, that molecule is also potentially cancerous or whatever. Now, if you got money to burn, we do have finest sardines. Now, as far as I'm aware, these sardines do not come with the head attached if you're squeamish. The only problem I would say with sardine coin is that they're sardines, and if you eat them, you're eating sardines and they taste of sardines. And they are sardines. But in the future, I presume these also will be on the blockchain with everything else on this planet. Okay, so what do we do with this? So we can hold on to this, see if it goes up in value, goes down in value, we could sell it. If you want to sell it, what you do? Now, I've been trying to work out the economics of this. I'm thinking you could fly to America, go to Las Vegas, go to the pawn shop, sell it just for pure cash in hand. So, let's work that out. As I was saying, what is about 12 grams of silver each? That's about 24 grams, just under an ounce. So that's what, maybe like 50 euro dollars. So fly to America, I don't know, sell like about $1,000. Maybe get up to $1,500, spend a couple $100 on a hotel room, get a taxi to the pawn shop. And then, of course, the pawn shop, they have to make money on it. They've got bills to pay. They have to pay their employees. They have to pay their electricity. They have to pay their rent, their insurance. So, they're not going to give you the full price, So if this is worth, like, maybe say $40, they might offer you like $20. Maybe haggle that a bit. $25, $30. Everybody wants to walk away happy. At the end of the day, everyone wants to feel they got a good deal, fair price. So I'm really trying to crunch those numbers. Maybe like costs 2 grand in total to get from Europe to America, get to Vegas, all your expenses. You're spending maybe you could spend maybe 2 grand, and you might make back 20, $30. So I'm really trying to crunch that at the moment. Now the other option is we hold on to this and we wait for total economic collapse. We then try and get into America after the collapse. I don't know if you could fly in or not. Let's say you could fly in somewhere. You could always fly into Canada, Mexico, I suppose, walk across the border. You then want to hire a group of mercenaries to travel through the Mad Max-esque wasteland. Yeah, you got to pay them, and then of course you have to tell them you're on a mission to rescue somebody. If you tell them you're just doing a deal on silver, well, they're going to whack you and take the silver. Same thing that will happen to all the tech bros in their fancy underground bunkers. That if things did collapse and they retreat, their security will whack them, take all the chicks. Of course, yeah, I don't know if they've thought that through. So again, you have to do what's right for your own personal circumstances. I mean, thinking of that older gentleman who deals in coins, he's most interested in the historical value and collecting all the different values, different eras, different designs. And I kind of had that inkling of curiosity as a kid and had all kinds of strange coins. One thing they used to do when you travel to kind of touristy places is they'd have coins like this where you could put them in a machine and they'd flatten them out. Here's one from the Brighton Sea Life Centre, which used to be an Irish 1 penny. It's come out very nicely, actually. It's kind of stretched out. And is this one? This was the Brighton Sea Life Centre. I don't know if you see these machines anymore. I don't know if younger people know what a penny is. There's the English penny. Which, of course, what's happened over time is that any value in the metals were taken out. 1971, Nixon took America off the gold standard because they were being made bankrupt by the Vietnam War. So you don't get any silver in more modern American or European coins, of course. Thankfully, though, we will be liberated by the technology that monitors everything we do. So we don't have to have the hassle of going around with these filthy, filthy pieces of precious metal in our pockets. I'm always amazed, going into local shops and seeing young kids buying like a can of Coke with their phone. I always think how sad that kids today don't come into contact with any kind of countercultural current to the contemporary programming. Anyway, another one of those coins I got was, well, I'll tell you, the only time I've been to America was in 2001, March. I think it was a week before St. Patrick's Day. And we had really heavy snow in Ireland that winter, spring, and then flew into New York, and they had the same weather. And I remember walking through Central Park, going past the Dakota building, and seeing the freezing swans, very like a kind of Disney wonderland. And I did all those touristy things like, the Empire State Building, and went to the top of the World Trade Center. And funnily enough, they had those penny stretching machines there. There's a little historical curio. Can you see that? Top of the world, New York. So I was there in March 2001 and got that penny made. I don't know what happened to those tires. I don't think they're there anymore. I think that whole area was redeveloped by I think it was the Israelis and the Saudis, and the Pentagon, I think, had that whole area redeveloped. So a little piece of history. Strange to think someone born in the year 2001, this is ancient history, while to me this feels like it was yesterday when I turned on the TV at lunchtime and then watched the news for about 2 days and wondered when the bombs are going to start falling. So yeah, when somebody was somebody born in the year 2000, you think they're now 25 years old. It's hard to process that. But I often think how younger people seem to have a trust of technology, or view technology and the online world as their culture, and older people as boomers and out of date, when actually their culture is a creation of corporations, and real culture and counterculture is something that comes from the street. And really, you could make another long video talking about the very poor quality of graffiti we see in Dublin and Europe. Very, very disappointing quality of graffiti in recent years. Just people tagging their little ego onto walls rather than attempting to communicate any counter currents to the corporate fascist culture. This is the world that existed from World War II to 1963. And this is the world that came into existence in 1964. So, of course, yes, the Beatles deserve some of the blame. And 1964 must seem like ancient history to anyone born since the year 2000. But some proof that it did exist, some tangible, physical will they focus? Why would they put them facing in opposite directions? Why would they put the decapitated head of JFK right in between the words, "In God we trust"? Because our world is always changing, but not in the natural sense, in the sense that we're processed by those that control the levers of culture and economics, and are always trying to process us into a less human and humane future, who want us to be less organic and less in touch with the natural world. As we can understand the simple point that it is psychopaths whose instinct is to control everything, who want to be demigods, who cannot enter the natural slipstream of life that flows through this world where all castles reveal themselves to eventually be made of sand. So, what you do with your time, money, energy, attention, presence is all up to you. And one can only assume that the things you see on TV, movies, music, YouTube are all things selling sensation and immediate gratification that attempts to cocoon your divine gifts within a digital purgatory. Because it's only out here in the world where you will find the interactive pleasure of reality and divinity that carved this out of the material world like some Fibonacci sequence. Because when you walk along the coast, often you'll find on a particular day, perhaps a blue moon, these are these little gifts of nature are available for free. Now, as everything online is, of course, about the grift, I suppose I will. Well, if I had any sense, I would be setting up an Etsy shop selling genuine Celtic manifestations, genuine Celtic Irish artifacts, some 10,000 years old, selling them to those who are discombobulated by the contemporary world and seeking the pleasure of touching earth, air, fire, and water in the hope they may reignite their spirit. But of course, the only reason any of us are on YouTube is in the hope we become popular enough to get our 30 pieces of silver in due time. I particularly enjoy those American channels that have seemed to have popped up very recently, all criticizing American culture and proclaiming how wonderful Europe and the European Union is, because have no doubt the Democrats' view of a future American culture is for it to be modeled on the European Union, one where you have no free speech, where everything you do is monitored, everything requires permission, and a Talmudic layer of a bureaucracy encompasses anything you might like to do. And somehow this is sold to Americans as just wondrous because you have buses and trams, while in America you have to drive anywhere. The trouble with our buses and trams is that They make you feel like you're living in the third world. But as the science tells us, we're all human, we're all the same, all cultures are equal, everything's wonderful, and utopia is just around the bend. If you can get over a mound of a million skulls and decapitate the king. When do you think you had more freedom? In what era? Because convenience trumps all for the children weaned on the internet's demonology.